The massive alien ships appeared at the edge of the solar system like dark clouds blocking out the stars. Admiral Vexthara stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the scanner displays with cold satisfaction. 847 warships stretched out behind her in perfect formation. Each vessel was larger than anything the humans had ever built. Each one carried enough firepower to crack a moon. "Status report," Vexthara commanded, her 4 arms clasped behind her back. "All ships in position, Admiral," her tactical officer replied. "Human fleet detected. 23 vessels total. They are maintaining defensive positions around their homeworld." Vexthara's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among her species. 23 ships. The humans were even more pathetic than intelligence reports had suggested. The Kethmoran Empire had conquered 47 star systems. Some had put up better fights with mining barges and cargo haulers. "Open communications to the human leadership," she ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a conference room filled with humans in military uniforms and formal suits. They all looked terrified, which pleased Vexthara immensely. Fear made surrender negotiations much simpler. "I am Admiral Vexthara of the Kethmoran Empire," she began, her voice carrying the authority of countless victories. "You have 72 hours to surrender completely. Disarm your military. Prepare your population for integration into the Empire. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your world." An older human with gray hair and a chest full of medals leaned forward. "Admiral, I am General Morrison, Chairman of Earth's Defense Council. Perhaps we can discuss terms." "There are no terms," Vexthara cut him off. 72 hours. Comply or face extinction." The transmission ended with a sharp click. Vexthara turned to her officers. "Begin standard siege formation. Monitor their communications. I want to know the moment they decide to surrender." On Earth, the emergency session continued long into the night. Politicians shouted at each other across the conference table. Military leaders pored over tactical displays that showed nothing but hopelessness. The numbers were simple and brutal. Even if every human ship fought perfectly, even if they managed to destroy 2 enemy vessels for every one they lost, Earth would still face an armada of over 800 ships. "We need more time," argued President Chun. "Maybe we can negotiate. Delay them while we evacuate the civilian populations to the outer colonies." "Evacuate 8 billion people in 72 hours? General Morrison shook his head. "It's impossible. And even if we could, they'd just hunt us down system by system. The Empire doesn't leave loose ends." Admiral Jackson, head of the space fleet, looked exhausted. "Our ships are good, but they're built for patrol duty and system defense. The Empire has been conquering star systems for 200 years. Their technology is proven in battle. Ours is mostly theoretical." In the back corner of the room, Admiral Sarah Chun sat quietly, studying a datapad that wasn't connected to the main tactical display. While everyone else focused on the impossible odds, she was reading through classified files from Luna shipyards. Her clearance level was high enough to access projects that most people in the room didn't even know existed. One file made her pause. Project Defiant. A prototype battleship that had been sitting in storage for 3 years. She remembered the controversy when it was shelved. "Too experimental," the review board had said. "Too unpredictable. Too far outside normal military doctrine." Right now, unpredictable sounded like exactly what they needed. The argument continued around the table. Some wanted to surrender immediately and hope for mercy. Others insisted on fighting to the last ship, making the Empire pay for every inch of space. A few suggested trying to contact other species the Empire had conquered, hoping to find allies. Admiral Chun stood up slowly. "I have a proposal." The room gradually quieted. Chun was known for her tactical brilliance, but also for her unconventional thinking. Some called her the best fleet commander humanity had ever produced. Others considered her a loose cannon who took too many risks. "I want permission to take a ship on a reconnaissance mission," she said. "Get close to their fleet. Study their formations, their technology. Maybe find a weakness we can exploit." General Morrison frowned. "Sarah, this isn't the time for scouting missions. We need every ship defending Earth. One ship won't make a difference in a straight fight," Chun replied. "But good intelligence might give us options we don't see yet." "What ship?" Admiral Jackson asked. "Everything we have is already assigned to defense groups." Chun looked down at her datapad. "The U-East Defiant. It's been sitting in Luna Shipyard since the project was cancelled. I can crew it with volunteers from the reserve lists." The room erupted in protests. The Defiant was experimental, untested in real combat. Its systems were too complex, too prone to malfunction. It wasn't even considered ready for active duty. President Chun raised her hand for silence. "Admiral Chun, I respect your service record, but this sounds like a suicide mission." "Staying here is a suicide mission," Sarah Chun replied calmly. "At least this way, we might learn something useful before we die." The vote was close. 7 in favor, 5 against, with 3 abstentions. Admiral Chun had her authorization, limited though it was. As the meeting broke up, she was already making lists in her head. She would need a crew willing to fly an untested ship into the teeth of the most powerful armada in known space. She would need engineers who understood experimental technology. Most of all, she would need people who thought the same way she did. People who saw impossible odds as interesting challenges, rather than reasons to surrender. 3 hours later, Admiral Chun stood in the docking bay of Luna Shipyards, looking up at the U-East Defiant. The ship didn't look like much. Smaller than a standard battleship, with an odd angular design that seemed almost alien. Its hull was covered with sensor arrays and weapon mounts that didn't match any standard configuration. Dr. Marcus Webb approached from behind, carrying a worn equipment case. The elderly scientist had designed most of the Defiant systems before the project was shut down. When Chun contacted him, he had volunteered immediately. "Still think she can fly?" Chun asked. Webb smiled, patting the ship's hull with obvious affection. "Captain, this ship was designed to do things that shouldn't be possible. The question isn't whether she can fly. The question is whether we're brave enough to let her show us what she can really do." Above them, the Defiant waited in silence, her experimental systems powered down but ready. In 48 hours, she would either prove that human ingenuity could triumph over impossible odds, or she would become another casualty in the Empire's long march across the galaxy. The countdown to humanity's Judgment Day continued, while a forgotten prototype prepared to make history. 3 years earlier, Dr. Marcus Webb had stood in this same docking bay, watching workers install the final components on his life's work. The used Defiant looked nothing like any other human warship, and that was exactly what Webb had intended. While other nations built bigger guns and thicker armor, Webb had asked a different question. What if they built a ship that could think? The idea had started small. During first contact with the Ethereal Collective 5 years ago, Earth's negotiators had been amazed by the aliens' ability to phase their ships through solid matter. The technology seemed like magic, but Webb saw it as physics humanity didn't understand yet. When the trade agreements were signed, he quietly arranged to purchase several damaged ethereal phase generators. The breakthrough came when Webb realized that the ethereal technology wasn't actually moving ships through dimensions. It was changing the molecular structure of matter itself, making solid objects temporarily permeable. The process required incredible computational power and split-second timing. Human pilots couldn't handle the calculations, but a sufficiently advanced artificial intelligence could. That led to Webb's second revolutionary idea. Instead of building a standard AI to control weapons and navigation, he would create something unprecedented, a learning system that could adapt alien technologies in real time. He called it the Adaptive Response Combat Heuristic Intelligence Engine, or ARCHI for short. The Military Review Board had hated everything about the project. Admiral Harrison, who led the evaluation committee, had been particularly vocal in his criticism. "Dr. Webb, you're asking us to trust our most advanced warship to an untested AI using alien technology we don't fully understand. That's not military doctrine. That's a recipe for disaster." Webb had tried to explain that disaster was exactly what they needed to prepare for. "Admiral, our enemies won't follow military doctrine either. They'll have weapons and tactics we've never seen before. We need a ship that can think its way through problems we haven't imagined yet." But the board wanted predictable results from proven systems. The Defiant was sealed up and forgotten, while the military focused on building conventional ships that followed conventional designs. Now, as Admiral Sarah Chan walked through the ship's corridors for the first time in years, she could see why the review board had been nervous. Everything about the Defiant was different. The bridge looked more like a science laboratory than a military command center. Instead of neat rows of control stations, there were circular workspaces where crew members could collaborate directly with Archie's holographic interfaces. "The ship's AI is integrated into every system," Dr. Webb explained as they toured the vessel. "Archie doesn't just control the weapons and engines. Archie is the ship in every meaningful sense. The human crew provides creativity and intuition, while Archie handles the computational complexity." Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, Chun's newly assigned tactical officer, looked skeptical. "Sir, how do we know this AI won't decide it knows better than we do and ignore our orders?" Webb smiled. "Because Archie was programmed by humans to solve human problems. The AI's core mission is to protect Earth and follow the orders of the ship's captain. Everything else is secondary." Chum studied the holographic displays that filled the main bridge. "Show me the weapon systems." The air around them shimmered, and suddenly they were standing in the middle of a three-dimensional schematic of the Defiant. Archie's voice came from speakers throughout the room, warm and friendly despite being artificial. "Good evening, Captain Chun. I am pleased to finally have a crew aboard. The ship's primary armament consists of 6 adaptive plasma cannons using modified crystalline focusing technology. Secondary weapons include phase torpedoes incorporating ethereal phasing technology and quantum mines based on theoretical research from the Sigma Draconis expedition." Rodriguez whistled softly. "Captain, I've never heard of half these weapon systems." "That's because they don't exist anywhere else," Webb said proudly. "Each system combines human engineering with alien principles we've learned through diplomatic contact. The result is weapons that can adapt to counter enemy defenses in real time." Chun walked around the holographic display, studying the ship's unusual design. "What about defense?" "The hull incorporates biometallic plating derived from samples provided by the Hive Collective," Archie explained. "When damaged, the hull can repair itself using nanotechnology adapted from their healing compounds. Additionally, the ship can phase partially out of normal space using ethereal technology, making it difficult for conventional weapons to achieve solid hits." "Difficult, but not impossible," Chai noted. "Correct, Captain. This ship was designed to survive through mobility and adaptability, not heavy armor. The theory is that a target that cannot be predicted cannot be effectively targeted." Over the next 6 hours, the rest of the crew arrived. Chun had chosen them carefully, looking for people who could think creatively under pressure. Lieutenant Torres from Engineering had been reprimanded twice for modifying standard equipment without authorization. Ensign Kim from Communications had developed new protocols for talking with alien species. Chief Petty Officer O'Brien, had served on 4 different classes of ship and could fix anything that used electricity. None of them were considered ideal by standard military evaluation. All of them had been marked as too independent, or lacks proper respect for established procedures. They were exactly the kind of people Chun needed for what she had in mind. As the crew familiarized themselves with their stations, Archie began monitoring Empire communications. The AI's learning algorithms processed thousands of intercepted transmissions, looking for patterns in their language, tactics, and technology. "Captain," Archie reported, "I have completed initial analysis of enemy communication protocols. The Empire's fleet structure appears to follow rigid hierarchical patterns. Their ships communicate in predetermined formations with standardized response times." "What does that tell us?" Chun asked. "Their strength comes from coordination and overwhelming firepower. However, this rigid structure may also be a weakness. If we can disrupt their communication patterns or force them to adapt to unexpected situations, their response time will be significantly delayed." Dr. Webb nodded approvingly. "This is exactly what I designed Archie to do. Find weaknesses in systems that appear perfect." Chun looked around the bridge at her small crew. 12 people total to operate a ship that normally would require 50. But these 12 people had something the Empire's thousands of crew members lacked: the freedom to improvise. "Archie, how long until you have a complete tactical analysis of the Empire fleet?" "Approximately 18 hours, Captain, assuming current data intake rates continue." "Good. We launch in 12 hours whether you're ready or not." The next morning, Earth's leaders gathered again in the emergency session. The Empire's deadline was now less than 36 hours away, and no miraculous solution had appeared. Several governments had already begun drafting surrender documents. In Luna shipyards, the UES Defiant powered up its engines for the first time in 3 years. Archie ran through system checks while the human crew strapped into their stations. Everything appeared normal, which was exactly what worried Dr. Webb. Normal was the last thing this ship was designed to be. "All stations report ready." "Captain," Rodriguez called out. Chun looked at the main display showing the Empire's Armada waiting at the edge of the solar system. 847 ships that had never known defeat, facing one experimental vessel that had never seen battle. "Take us out," she ordered. The Defiant slipped away from Luna shipyards like a ghost, its experimental engines producing barely detectable energy signatures. Behind them, Earth's conventional fleet maintained defensive positions, preparing for humanity's last stand. Ahead of them, an empire that had conquered the galaxy waited with supreme confidence, unaware that a forgotten prototype was about to teach them a lesson about the dangers of underestimating human creativity. Admiral Vexthar watched her tactical display with growing irritation. 20 hours had passed since her ultimatum, and the humans still hadn't responded. Their pathetic fleet remained in defensive formation around Earth, showing no signs of preparing to surrender. She had expected them to collapse in fear within the first few hours. "Status of human fleet movements?" she demanded. "No changes, Admiral," her tactical officer reported. "All 23 vessels remain in position. However, we are detecting one small ship moving away from their moon. It appears to be heading in our general direction." Vexthar's mandibles clicked with amusement. "A single ship? What class?" "Unknown, Admiral. The energy signature doesn't match any vessel in our database. It's approximately 2 kilometers long, much smaller than their standard battleships." "Perhaps it's a diplomat coming to negotiate surrender," suggested Commander Kurth, her second in command. "Should we allow it to approach?" Vexthara studied the tactical display. The lone human ship was still several hours away at its current speed, while outside weapons range. Around her, The Empire's massive fleet waited in perfect formation. Each ship knew its exact position, its assigned targets, its role in the coming battle. They had used this same formation to crush the defenses of 36 worlds. Let it come, Lextar decided. When it gets close enough, we'll use it as a demonstration. Show the humans what happens to ships that oppose the Empire. On the bridge of the UES Defiant, Captain Chun studied the enemy formation through Archie's sensors. The Empire ships were arranged in a classic battle line, with the largest vessels at the center and smaller ships screening the flanks. It was intimidating and efficient, the kind of formation that had intimidated countless species into surrender. "Archie, what do you make of their positioning?" she asked. "The formation is tactically sound for conventional warfare, Captain," the AI replied. "However, it assumes that enemy vessels will engage using standard attack patterns. Their spacing is optimized for mutual fire support against multiple attackers of similar capability." Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez leaned forward in his chair. "Captain, they've got us outnumbered almost 1,000 to 1. What's the plan?" Chum smiled grimly. "The plan is to not be what they expect." Dr. Webb, monitoring the ship's systems from his position at the science station, looked up from his displays. "Archie has finished analyzing their communication patterns. The Empire's ships coordinate using a rigid command structure. Orders flow from the flagship to divisional commanders, then to individual ships. It's efficient, but it creates predictable delays." "How predictable?" Chun asked. "Approximately 2.7 seconds for routine tactical adjustments, 6.4 seconds for major strategic changes," Archie calculated. "This assumes standard communication protocols are maintained." Chun nodded. "And if their communications were disrupted, response times would increase dramatically, potentially creating windows of opportunity for unconventional attacks." On the Empire flagship, Sensor Operator, Youth noticed something unusual about the approaching human vessel. "Admiral, the unknown ship is altering course. It's no longer approaching directly." Vexthara glanced at the display without concern. "Probably trying to find the best angle to surrender from. Keep monitoring." But the human ship wasn't looking for a good surrender position. The Defiant was moving in a complex spiral pattern, using its advanced sensors to map the Empire fleet's formation in detail. Archie recorded the position of every ship, the gaps between formations, the timing of their communication pulses. "Interesting," Archie observed. "Their fleet discipline is remarkable. Every vessel maintains exact position relative to their neighbors. No deviation from assigned coordinates. That's a strength in conventional battles," Dr. Webb noted. "But it might be a weakness against unconventional tactics." Chief O'Brien looked up from his engineering station. "Captain, all systems are running perfectly. Almost too perfectly, if you know what I mean. This ship wants to do something." Chung checked their position. Still 3 hours from the Empire fleet, but close enough for the enemy to start taking them seriously. "Archie, begin passive scans of their weapon systems. I want to know everything about their capabilities before we get close enough to become a target." The AI sensors reached out across space, analyzing energy signatures and weapon configurations. What Archie found was both impressive and predictable. The Empire ships carried massive plasma cannons, heavy missile launchers, and defensive shields that could withstand tremendous punishment. Everything was built for straightforward, overwhelming firepower. "Captain," Archie reported, "the Empire's weapons are designed for long-range engagement against heavily armored targets. Their targeting systems assume enemy vessels will maintain steady courses and predictable speeds." "What happens if we don't maintain steady courses?" Rodriguez asked. "Their hit probability drops significantly. However, they compensate for this by simply firing more weapons." An hour later, the Defiant crossed into the Empire's detection perimeter. Alarms sounded throughout the enemy fleet as sensors identified the approaching vessel. "Admiral," the tactical officer called out, "the human ship is now within engagement range. Should we open fire?" Vexthara studied the tactical display. One tiny ship against 847. It was almost insulting. "Signal the destroyer Vengeance. Have them eliminate the human vessel. Make sure the rest of their fleet can see what happens to ships that challenge the Empire." Commander Zecht, captain of the destroyer Vengeance, received his orders with satisfaction. His ship was small by Empire standards, but it still outweighed the human vessel by a factor of 3. His crew was experienced, his weapons were proven in battle, and victory was certain. "All hands to battle stations," he announced. "We have the honor of firing the first shot in this campaign. Make it count." The Vengeance broke formation and accelerated toward the Defiant. Its engines burned bright against the darkness of space as it closed the distance between them. On the human ship, alarms chimed softly as Archie detected the approaching destroyer. "Captain, one Empire vessel is moving to intercept. Destroyer class, approximately 50 weapon systems, shields at full power." Chun looked around the bridge at her crew. 12 people who had volunteered to fly an experimental ship into impossible odds. "This is it, people. Time to show them what humans can do when we stop following the rules." She pressed the come button. "All stations, prepare for combat. Remember, we're not trying to outfight them. We're trying to outthink them." Lieutenant Torres spoke up from the engineering station. "Captain, should I charge the weapons?" "Not yet," Chen replied. "First, let's see how they react to something they've never seen before. Archie, activate the phase drive." The Defiant's hull shimmered as the ethereal phasing technology came online. The ship didn't disappear, but it became translucent, existing partially in normal space and partially somewhere else. To the Empire's sensors, the human vessel suddenly became much harder to target. Commander Zecht stared at his tactical display in confusion. "What happened to the human ship?" "Sensors are having difficulty maintaining lock." "Unknown, Commander," his tactical officer replied. "It appears to be some form of cloaking technology, but not like anything in our database." "No matter. Close to point-blank range and fire everything. Something that size can't survive a full weapons barrage." But as the Vengeance closed in for the kill, the Defiant did something impossible. The human ship accelerated directly toward the destroyer, then suddenly changed direction by 90 degrees without slowing down. The maneuver violated every principle of physics that the Empire understood. How did they do that? Commander Zecht demanded his science officer check the readings twice before answering. "Sir, their ship appears to be using some form of inertial manipulation. They're not actually changing direction. They're changing which direction counts as forward." The Defiant spun through space like a dancer, moving in patterns that made the Empire's targeting computers struggle to keep up. Every time the destroyer tried to line up a shot, the human ship was somewhere else. "Fire anyway," Zecht ordered. "Saturate the area with plasma bursts." The destroyer opened fire with everything it had. Brilliant streams of energy lit up space as dozens of weapons fired simultaneously. It should have been enough firepower to vaporize a dozen ships the size of the Defiant. Instead, the energy beams passed harmlessly through empty space. The human ship danced between them like it knew exactly where each shot would be fired. Which, thanks to Archie's analysis of Empire communication patterns, it did. "Captain," Archie reported calmly, "the enemy vessel's targeting system is quite predictable. Their fire control protocols follow standard Imperial doctrine. I can calculate the optimal evasion pattern." Chun gripped her command chair as the ship twisted through another impossible maneuver. "Keep us alive, Archie, and start looking for an opening." Behind them, The rest of the Empire fleet watched in stunned silence as a single human ship made one of their destroyers look like a clumsy giant swinging at a butterfly. Admiral Vextara's mandibles clicked in anger. This was not how the battle was supposed to begin. The moment came when Commander Zect made a crucial mistake. Frustrated by his inability to hit the dancing human ship, he ordered his destroyer to close to minimum range. "If we can't target them accurately, we'll fire everything at point-blank range." Captain Chun saw the opportunity immediately. "Archie, full stop. Right now." The Defiant ceased its evasive dance and hung motionless in space. For a moment, Commander Zect thought his enemy had suffered a system failure. His destroyer raced forward, all weapons charging for a devastating final barrage. "Now," Chun whispered. The Defiant didn't move. Instead, it did something that broke every rule of space combat the Empire knew. The ship's hull became completely transparent as the phase drive activated at maximum power. The destroyer's massive bulk passed directly through the human vessel as if it were a hologram, but the Defiant wasn't a hologram. As the destroyer passed through its position, the human ship solidified just long enough for its hull-mounted mining beams to slice through the enemy's engine compartment. The beams weren't designed as weapons, but they cut through armor plating like it was paper. The destroyer Vengeance exploded in a brilliant flash of light, its reactors overloading as critical systems failed. In the space of 5 seconds, a ship that had conquered a dozen worlds became expanding debris. Across the Empire fleet, stunned silence filled every bridge. A destroyer had just been eliminated by a ship 1/3 its size, using weapons and tactics that shouldn't exist. Admiral Vextara stared at her tactical display in disbelief. "What just happened?" "The destroyer has been destroyed, Admiral," her tactical officer reported unnecessarily. "The human ship passed through it somehow, then fired some kind of cutting beam." "That's impossible," Vextara snapped. "Ships cannot pass through other ships. And those energy signatures don't match any known weapon system." On the Defiant, Dr. Webb was monitoring system readings with growing excitement. "Captain, the adaptive weapon systems are working perfectly. Archie just figured out how to use our mining equipment as a combat weapon." "One down," Chun said grimly. 846 to go. "Archie, how are our systems holding up?" "All systems operating within normal parameters, Captain. The phase drive requires a 30-second cooldown between full activations, but partial phasing remains available. I am also detecting significant confusion in Empire communication channels." Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his tactical station. "Captain, the entire enemy fleet is changing formation. They're moving to surround us." Chun studied the tactical display as hundreds of ships began repositioning themselves. The Empire was treating her single vessel as a serious threat, which meant they would bring overwhelming force to bear. "Time to leave the neighborhood," she decided. "Archie, best speed away from the fleet. Let's see how they handle a running battle." The Defiant accelerated away from the Empire formation, but not in a straight line. The ship twisted through space in a complex helical pattern, making it impossible for long-range weapons to achieve target locks. Behind them, 3 squadrons of Empire cruisers gave chase. "Captain," Archie reported, "I have completed analysis of Empire weapons technology. Their plasma cannons operate on a frequency that becomes unstable when exposed to inverted magnetic fields." Dr. Webb looked up from his science station. "Inverted magnetic fields? We don't have equipment that can generate those." "Actually, we do," Archie replied. "The crystalline focusing arrays for our main weapons can be reconfigured to produce the required effect. It will take approximately 47 seconds to implement the modifications." "Do it," Chun ordered. "And find us some targets while you're at it." The pursuing Empire ships closed the distance rapidly, their superior numbers allowing them to spread out and cut off escape routes. Captain Thorax of the cruiser Domination was confident that quantity would triumph over whatever strange technology the humans possessed. "All ships, fire at will," he transmitted. "Saturate the target area. Don't give them room to maneuver." A storm of plasma fire erupted from the Empire ships, creating a web of deadly energy that filled space ahead of the fleeing human vessel. There was nowhere to run, no way to evade the concentrated barrage. The Defiant flew directly into the center of the plasma storm. What happened next defied every principle of weapons technology the Empire understood. Instead of being vaporized by the plasma barrage, the human ship absorbed the energy and redirected it back at the attackers. The crystalline focusing arrays, reconfigured by Archie's calculations, turned the Empire's own weapons against them. Captain Thorax watched in horror as his ship's plasma cannons began overloading. Emergency shutdown of all weapons. He ordered, but it was too late. The Domination shook violently as its main guns exploded from feedback overload. 2 more cruisers suffered similar fates, their weapons systems destroyed by their own energy output. The remaining ships in the squadron scattered, afraid to fire their weapons for fear of the same result. "Impossible," Admiral Vexthara whispered, watching the tactical display as 3 more ships were eliminated by technology that should not exist. "Send Squadron 7 to intercept. Use kinetic weapons only, no energy weapons." But Squadron 7 never got the chance to engage. The Defiant had stopped running and was now hunting. The ship moved through space like a predator, using its phase drive to appear behind enemy vessels without warning. The cruiser Iron Fist was the first to die. The human ship materialized inside its shield perimeter and fired quantum mines directly into its reactor core. The explosion was visible from halfway across the solar system. Commander Yalith of the heavy cruiser Eternal Victory tried to ram the human ship, reasoning that their superior mass would crush the smaller vessel. Instead, the Defiant phased partially out of normal space, allowing the Empire ship to pass through while quantum mines attached themselves to its hull like parasites. The Eternal Victory lost it exactly 15 seconds before the mines detonated simultaneously, tearing the ship apart from the inside. Across the Empire fleet, panic began to spread. Ships that had conquered star systems were being destroyed by a single human vessel, using weapons and tactics that seemed impossible. Some captains requested permission to retreat. Others demanded reinforcements. A few suggested negotiating with the humans. Admiral Vexthara rejected all suggestions. "We have 800 ships remaining," she declared. "One human vessel cannot defeat an entire armada. All ships, close formation. We will overwhelm them with numbers." But numbers weren't helping. Every time a group of Empire ships moved to surround the Defiant, the human vessel would phase through their formation and attack from an unexpected angle. Every time they concentrated fire, the crystalline arrays would redirect the energy back at the attackers. Most frustrating of all, the human ship seemed to learn from every encounter. After the first few battles, it began anticipating Empire tactics before they were implemented. Archie's learning algorithms were processing combat data in real time, identifying patterns in Empire behavior and developing countermeasures. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres called from engineering, "the biometallic hull plating is working better than expected. We've taken several glancing hits, but the nanobots are repairing the damage almost instantly." "And our weapons?" Chun asked. "Archie keeps modifying them between engagements," Torres replied. "I've never seen anything like it. The AI is essentially redesigning our entire weapon suite every few minutes based on what it learns about Empire technology." Dr. Webb smiled proudly. "This is exactly what the ship was designed to do. Adapt faster than the enemy can respond." The battle continued for 6 hours. What had started as an execution became a nightmare for the Empire fleet. Ship after ship fell to the Defiant's impossible combination of alien technologies. The human vessel phased through solid matter, redirected energy weapons, repaired damage automatically, and struck from directions that should have been impossible. By the end of the 6th hour, Admiral Vexthara was staring at a tactical display that showed the impossible. Her invincible armada had lost 230 ships to a single human vessel. The survivors were scattered across space, afraid to engage and unsure how to fight an enemy that broke every rule they understood. "Admiral," Commander Kurth said quietly, "perhaps we should consider withdrawing to regroup." Vexthara's mandibles clicked with fury. "We do not retreat from inferior species. Signal all remaining ships. We attack together, all at once. Even the humans cannot fight 600 ships simultaneously." But as the surviving Empire vessels formed up for their final assault, something changed in the human ship's behavior. The Defiant stopped evading and turned to face the approaching Armada directly. Captain Chun looked around her bridge at the exhausted crew. "Archie, how many more ships can we handle?" "Based on current performance data, Captain, I estimate we can eliminate approximately 60% of the remaining fleet before our systems require major maintenance." Chun nodded grimly. "That leaves about 240 ships still functional. Too many to handle with our current tactics." Dr. Webb looked up from his displays. "Captain, Archie has one more modification to suggest. It's risky, but it might end this battle decisively." "What kind of modification?" "Archie wants to link all of our alien technologies together into a single system. The phasing drive, the crystalline arrays, the biometallic hull, everything." The transformation began slowly. Deep inside the Defiant's hull, systems that had never been meant to work together started connecting through Archie's quantum processing cores. Ethereal phase technology linked with crystalline focusing arrays. Hive biometallics merged with human engineering. Dozens of alien discoveries from first contact scenarios across the galaxy began forming something entirely new. "Captain," Dr. Webb called out, watching his instruments with growing amazement, "the power readings are off the charts. Archie is creating connections I never thought possible." On the bridge, warning lights flashed as the ship systems pushed beyond their design limits. But instead of failing, the alien technologies seemed to strengthen each other. The biometallic hull began reshaping itself, optimizing for the new energy flows. The phase drive synchronized with the quantum computers, creating processing power that exceeded anything humans had built. "All stations report ready," Lieutenant Rodriguez announced, though his voice carried uncertainty. Nobody knew what the ship was becoming. Captain Chen watched the Empire fleet closing in. 600 ships in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready. Admiral Vexthara's final gambit was based on simple mathematics. No single vessel could engage hundreds of enemies simultaneously. She was about to be proven wrong. "Archie," Chun said calmly, "execute your plan." The used Defiant stopped being a ship and became something else entirely. The first effect was visual. The ship's hull became transparent, then shifted through colors that had no names, finally settling into a pattern that seemed to exist in more dimensions than normal space allowed. To the Empire fleet, it looked like a star had suddenly appeared in their midst. The second effect was tactical. Every alien technology aboard the Defiant activated simultaneously, but instead of working separately, they formed a single integrated weapon system. The phase drive didn't just make the ship intangible. It made the ship exist in multiple locations at once. The crystalline arrays didn't just focus energy. They focused reality itself. The biometallic hull didn't just repair damage. It rewrote the laws of physics in the ship's immediate vicinity. Admiral Vexthara stared at her tactical display as her sensors registered impossible readings. "What am I looking at?" "Unknown Admiral," her science officer replied, his voice filled with terror. "Our instruments detect the human ship in 47 different locations simultaneously. Each reading shows different energy signatures, different weapon configurations. That's impossible. A ship cannot exist in multiple locations at once." But the Defiant was no longer bound by the rules that governed normal ships. Archie had discovered something that military scientists across the galaxy would spend centuries trying to understand. When sufficiently advanced technologies were integrated by an intelligence capable of thinking in multiple dimensions simultaneously, the result transcended normal physics. What happened next lasted exactly 47 seconds. Across the Empire formation, ships began exploding without warning. No weapons fire was visible. No energy beams crossed space. Instead, the Defiant seemed to simply will enemy vessels out of existence. Captain Thorax of the battlecruiser Supreme Authority watched his tactical display in horror as 3 ships in his squadron vanished in rapid succession. "Where are the weapons coming from? I don't see any attack vectors." His answer came when his own ship suddenly shuddered. The hull plates began dissolving as quantum mines materialized inside the vessel's corridors. The mines hadn't been fired from any external weapon. They had been created directly inside the ship by technology that could manipulate matter at the molecular level. The Supreme Authority joined the growing cloud of debris that had once been the Empire's invincible Armada. In those 47 seconds, the Defiant destroyed 312 ships. The attacks came from impossible angles, using weapons that couldn't exist, delivered by a vessel that seemed to be everywhere at once. Empire crews watched their instruments fail as reality itself became unreliable in the presence of the transformed human ship. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the impossible assault stopped. The Defiant flickered back into normal space, its hull returning to merely translucent instead of transdimensional. Warning alarms sounded throughout the ship as the alien technologies disengaged from their unified state. "Damage report," Chung called out, gripping her command chair as the ship shuddered. "All systems overloaded but functional," Chief O'Brien reported from engineering. "The biometallic hull is already beginning repairs. We'll be back to full capability in about 20 minutes. Dr. Webb stared at his readings in amazement. "Captain, Archie just performed calculations that should have required a computer the size of a moon. The AI didn't just integrate our alien technologies. It transcended them." On her tactical display, Chung could see the results. Where the Empire's Armada had once filled space with 847 ships, barely 200 survived. The remaining vessels were scattered across a volume of space larger than Earth's orbit, their formations broken. Their crews shattered by an encounter with something beyond their understanding. Admiral Vexthar's flagship, the Eternal Dominion, hung crippled in space. Its engines were dark, its weapons offline, its hull scarred by weapons that had struck from inside the ship's own structure. Around her, the pride of the Kethmoran Empire lay in ruins. "Admiral," her communications officer called out with a trembling voice, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 ships. They're asking permission to withdraw." Vexthara looked at her tactical display one more time. 200 ships remaining from an armada that had never known defeat. A single human vessel that had just demonstrated technology beyond anything in the galaxy. A battle that had turned into a massacre despite every advantage being on her side. For the first time in her military career, Admiral Vexthara faced a decision that her training had never prepared her for. "Signal all ships," she said quietly. "General retreat. Maximum speed away from this system." The message that went out across space carried more than just tactical orders. It carried the news that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of warfare, technology, and the species called humanity. As the Empire ships limped away into deep space, Earth's communication networks carried a different message. The impossible had happened. The armada that had conquered dozens of star systems had been defeated by a single ship crewed by 12 humans and an artificial intelligence that had learned to think like them. In the emergency command center, President Chun stared at the tactical display showing the retreating Empire fleet. How many ships? 67, still capable of faster-than-light travel, Admiral Jackson reported. The rest are either destroyed or crippled. Sarah's ship is requesting permission to return to Luna shipyards for maintenance. General Morrison shook his head in disbelief. One ship, 12 crew members, against the most powerful armada in known space. Dr. Webb's voice came over the communication system from the Defiant. It wasn't just one ship, General. It was one ship that combined technologies from a dozen different species, guided by an artificial intelligence that could think in ways no single species ever could, and crewed by humans who refused to accept that the impossible was impossible. 3 days later, Captain Sarah Chun stood in the same Luna shipyard's docking bay, watching teams of engineers and scientists swarm over the Defiant. Every system was being studied, every component analyzed, every piece of alien technology examined for ways to replicate its performance. But Chun knew that simply copying the technology wouldn't be enough. The Defiant's true power had come from something that couldn't be mass-produced: the willingness to combine ideas that weren't supposed to work together. The Empire will be back, Dr. Webb said, joining her near the observation window. They'll return with new tactics, new technologies, new strategies designed to counter what we showed them. Chun nodded. But they'll be expecting another ship like the Defiant. They'll prepare for phase drives and quantum weapons and adaptive AI systems. And instead, we'll build ships that combine completely different technologies in completely different ways. We'll use what we learned from the ethereals, the crystallines, the Hive Collective, and every other species we encounter. But we'll use them in ways that nobody expects, not even ourselves. Webb smiled. You're talking about making the entire fleet experimental. I'm talking about making the entire fleet human, Chun replied. Every ship unique, every crew creative, every battle a chance to discover something new about what's possible when you stop accepting limitations. Above them, the Defiant rested in its docking cradle, its hull still bearing the scars of its impossible victory. But it was no longer unique. In shipyards across the solar system, construction crews were beginning work on vessels that would carry forward the lesson humanity had learned. When faced with impossible odds, humans didn't surrender. They got creative. The Empire would return eventually, but they would find a very different enemy waiting for them. Not a species that followed military doctrine or accepted conventional limitations, but a race that saw every challenge as an opportunity to discover what had never been tried before. In the depths of space, the retreating Empire fleet